Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast, the voice of bodybuilding. And today's voice is Sara Bradley, who is a WPD IFBB Pro. So super cool to have you on today. Thank you, first of all, for coming on. And you're a coach as part of Team Evo. And then also, obviously, Tom coaches you as well. It's super cool, actually, that you've got this relationship, because he spoke about you on the podcast. He came on and it was just like, this is what a professional athlete is. This is Sara. She just lives and breathes it. And for this episode, it's going to be super cool to actually get stuck into what is involved to continue progressing through the pro leagues, right? Because I think there's this sort of, I guess in the Instagram world, it's like, okay, so maybe this is attainable for a lot of competitors starting out. And then it's like, but actually what is involved and how much, do you need to put into this to progress? And something I've started asking my guests at the start is, what is the biggest bit of advice you would give to yourself as a newbie bodybuilder?
Oh, that's a good question. I think probably the biggest bit of advice was be okay with going from being a big fish in a little pond to a small fish in a big pond. Because I think what a lot of people don't understand, like new pros and myself included, you don't realize the difference in amateur bodybuilding to professional bodybuilding, especially, I mean, well, in any category, female, male, whatever it be. But when I pro debuted in Reno a couple of years ago, I didn't realize that I'd gone from before turning pro, I'd never lost a show outside of the PCA British, where I came third, and I think that was the year Michelle Ines turned pro as well. And I was like, fuck, I've never lost. And like, obviously, yes, they're in the British, but like outside of the top three or whatever, I was just like, I mean, I've never been outside the top three anyway, but I kind of went to America and was like, oh shit, these girls are serious. Like, and you don't really expect such a change in kind of just the size and the application of athlete as well. I mean, it's just completely different. I mean, the States alone is completely different anyway, but just in general, I think a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm going to walk this. Like when you do IFBB as an amateur in the UK, it is kind of, especially women's physique, there's never really that many people and it's kind of that. But when you go into a lineup where there's 20 plus women, and I've never done a show outside of any lower than 20 because, I go to challenge myself. I go to stand with the best of the best. And I was just kind of like taken aback by just how many people were there, the size of these ladies, the their ability to put themselves into these shows. I mean, we're talking ladies that have just been around the ring years and years. I mean, I met an amazing lady who was 51 years old and she was kind of just chilling. These ladies just like, oh, what do you want to do on the weekend? I just want to go and get on stage. You know what I mean? Like they're always in shape all year round. They just love what they do. And it's just going from arguably a country that doesn't really give us ladies the time of day like the bigger ladies. I mean, see, I think the UK is very much going down the men's physique bikini kind of route, whereas women's physique figure as well, maybe more so nowadays. We don't really get the time of day. So going to countries and being a pro now and experiencing these other shows, you really do see that because these ladies are taken a little bit more seriously, they're given the ability to progress way more. I mean, if you look at Natalia, who was obviously Miss Olympia a couple of years ago, she's my age. And if you think, fuck, like if I had been in the States when I was younger, where would I be now? She's turned up at the Olympia multiple times now and she's 27. So it's kind of like, is it very much a nature versus nurture kind of situation where she's been nurtured into where she is now because of what's available to her? Whereas could I be there? But I grew up in the UK where bodybuilding isn't really, do you know what I mean? So that's definitely something that I would say to a lot of people, and something that I would have said to myself is when you turn pro, be aware that you'll be a very, very tiny little fish in a massive pond. But yeah, how do we you don't want tiny shows, you don't want to not be pushed, you don't want to be pushed outside of that comfort zone, because that's where we progress, right? So that's definitely something that I would say to myself, and anyone that's looking to turn pro, is be ready for that change, because it will hit you really hard. You'll kind of be standing on stage like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I'm standing with, you know, I was there when Jack Eagles turned pro, and he was, obviously Jack Eagles is a classic lad, and he was like, you know, he stood next to Wesley Vissers, who's an Olympian, and the size difference from Wesley to Jack, and Jack's a big lad, right? So standing next to someone like Wesley, I mean, I stood next to Wesley in a gym, and I was like, the density of these people is just mad, and the women are just even madder because they're just these amazing athletes that have put years and years to bodybuilding. And you can tell that, yes, obviously the average age of women's physique's like mid-30s and up. So these ladies have put 10, 15, 20 plus years into this physique. So these ladies are super duper dense, and they're just generally badass, to be honest. But yeah, that's definitely something I would probably say to me when I was younger, is just be prepared to be put back down the pecking order.
Yeah, for sure. And I always think, you know, when you do progress through the ranks, as it were, and you're in this scenario that you've just described, it's like actually you can be very much inspired by these athletes, but it's not till you're exposed to it. And I had the same when I started competing internationally. I was like, holy fucking shit, these girls. Like, and you know, like the UK, sort of the wellness scene is up and coming a bit more, but as an example, you know, when I went to Mexico, these wellness girls, I'm literally like, whoa, this is next level. And I don't know about you, it'd be interesting to ask, actually, when I competed internationally, all of the sort of the teams around the world, they're all very, very serious. They've got like their kit on, and it's a very different vibe. But I was like, this is so cool. But being from the UK, it's sort of like, I don't know, it feels different. I agree with you totally with that.
Absolutely. And I think people just, the general attitude when you're speaking with other ladies or whatever, it's just so much more positive. I remember having a conversation with one of the ladies at Legions, and she said, so where are you from? And I was like, oh, the UK. And she's like, why have you flown this far out to be here? And I was like, because I want to debut here, and there's nothing really that I want to be, not necessarily a part of, but there's nothing that's going to really benefit me in regards to pushing myself in the UK, really. And we don't have a show outside of, obviously, this year we didn't have a show to go to, so why would I spend my time kind of in that area of the world when I can spend a bit more money and fly over and make more of an impact in a country that's going to be more impactful into my career? So and it's just, and she was like, what about the scene in the UK? Is it good? And I was like, not really. Like, and they couldn't fathom the fact that we didn't really have much of a scene over here. And even someone that I trained with back in Reno, she was like, do you talk much to each other? And I was like, well, there's a handful of us that know each other in the UK, but it's not like, you know, all these girls will turn up to these shows, know each other, give each other hugs and stuff. And it's kind of like, you know, we don't really know much more outside of maybe 2 or 3 other pros in the UK, because a lot of them are either retired or a lot of them are just off the grid. So yeah, and it's mad how different it changes from kind of country to country. Even in Alicante, it's not as pally, but you can still tell that it's like a different athlete, and you know, there's more kind of being handed to them and more kind of things that they can take into their careers and really push them forward. But yeah, it's mad the difference in UK shows and international shows. And I say to anyone, if you can do an international show, do one. And this isn't me really shitting on the UK bodybuilding scene, but then again, we need to be honest and truthful in the fact that the UK scene for bigger women isn't there, and it sucks that it's not, because you've got all these young ladies that are turning pro. I mean, first of all, you need 5 women to be in women's physique or bodybuilding or any category to turn pro for a start. So if we don't have 5 ladies there, we're taking away someone's right to turn pro. And when they turn pro, they don't have the platform to go and to do their pro debut on home soil. So you've either got to be in the position where you've got a little bit of money saved away to go and travel, and you've got to be aware that you've got to travel. And a lot of people don't really like traveling. They'd rather be able to stay home. And also, like, you've got to remember that a lot of people like their family to come and watch, and you've got to be okay with not having your family there. Do you know what I mean? I'm very lucky to have a very supportive fiance that will travel with me, but my dad hasn't really seen me on stage since I turned pro because I've not been able to compete in the UK. So it's kind of like, you know, if you can compete internationally, then please do, because the opportunities that come from the back of competing and just the connections that you make are great, and the shows are run really well. And, you know, I hope that the UK show for women physique this year is good, because, you know, if it deserves to be, we deserve to have a platform in the UK. And you know, it's important that we are given that right and given that platform. But I do say to a lot of people, if you get the chance, please just go, and even if it is Alicante, or even if it's a European show, go and experience it, because it's so different to what we get given in the UK, massively, even more so as women.
Yeah, I literally, it's very hard as well to then contemplate competing in the UK again. And again, it's
Yeah,
not, it's not bashing the UK or whatever. It gave us the opportunity to do what we've done. But it's like, once you experience that, you're like, this
yeah.
is fucking, it's so epic. And I find as well, of course, there is the money side of things, but if you can do it, it's almost like a celebration of what you've put into a prep, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's no better feeling than being like, oh, so I've got 6 weeks left, but I've got 6 weeks left until I go away and stay in America for 10 days. You know what I mean? And that is the hands down the best thing about prepping and obviously getting on stage. But it's like, it is literally like a celebration in the fact that you like can't wait to go to the States, be in a new area, and the crowds in the States are so much more forgiving. So you'll have a lot of people turn up just to watch, and you can really vibe with the crowd. Like, I know that sounds really weird, but like there's nothing worse than doing a routine and not having any feedback from the crowd. Because I like to be quite lively on stage, because that's just my persona on stage. But like it's just nice to have that feedback and know everyone's having a good time and stuff like that. And whereas in the UK it's a little bit more kind of settled. But yeah, I think it's just, yeah, if you can go over there, I think it's just the best thing ever. And you can go, and some of my greatest memories are going out there with my fiance and being able to share those moments with her. And Alicante with Tom was hands down one of the best experiences I've ever had, because we had our team there, we had close friends, we all watched the show together, and it was just so much fun. And I think if you have something to really look forward to, then I mean, you shouldn't not be bodybuilding if you don't enjoy getting on stage, in my opinion. But but yeah, like I just think it's so much fun. So if you know you struggle with motivation during prep, or you have like harder days that you really do hit you quite hard, have something at the end like an international show, because it will be an absolute game changer, because it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah, actually, that raises a good point with, enjoying your time on stage, etc. Now, I'm sure you've been there, I've been there, even just backstage, working backstage and competing, when people are just so focused on, I'm doing this after the show, this has been a terrible prep, etc., etc. And I'm like, guys, you've worked for, some natties might be doing 10 months for a prep. And it's like, try to, stay in your lane of having that day, because what you get, maybe, bikini or whatever, it could be 10 minutes on stage, not even that. And I guess it's trying to reframe that. Do you have this sort of talk with clients, and have you ever struggled yourself with like really finding a prep hard and then getting to the show and being like, oh, I just want this out the fucking way?
Yeah, I think when it comes to bodybuilding, I'm a firm believer of you either do it or you don't, because it takes so much of your life that you can't be a get on stage. Maybe I don't know. Like, it's, you're getting on stage or you're not, because a lot of people have this perception of, yes, a lot of people show like their stage photos, and it's really important to do that because you've done something that's made you proud. But it's 99% of the time it's being so fucking tired that you can't get up off the sofa, or you can't like do things that you don't have that mental capacity to speak to your loved ones and stuff like that. And people need to understand that it takes a lot of your life, and you need to be prepared for that. So it's not, I could get on stage. It's, you're getting on stage or you're not. And you've got to be aware that this will happen, that will happen. You're going to be tired as fuck. You're not going to have the mental capacity to do anything. But you've got to be like, fuck, I love this sport. Do you know what I mean? That's so important, because it takes up so much time. You've got to be like, fuck yeah, I love bodybuilding. On days where you just sit there and you're like just sinking into the sofa, being like, I just love this shit. When you're like, I want to die but love it. And yeah, yeah, that's it exactly. And when you have clients that want to get on stage, you've just got to be honest and be like, right, okay, so let's think strategically about this. Where are we gonna? What do we need to do in order to get you on stage? If that's something we can do in a long-term plan, say like 5 years. Say someone came to me, women's, or the idea they want to get to women's physique, but at the moment or in this current situation they weren't ready for it. We would then devise a game plan and be like, look, I don't think you're settled into women's physique. Either we look at doing a category like figure, or even something like train figure or toned or athletic figure or something like that in PCA. And then we look at, you know, the steps we can take to go into IFBB women's physique or NPC women's physique or something like that. So, you know, that's again something that coaches should be able to do, is talk to their clients about things like this, open and honest. And a lot of my clients, you know, anyone could ask any of my clients, and the fact that I develop strong relationships because, one, I'm so emotionally invested in people's journeys because I fucking love bodybuilding. So I want to see people do well, right? And for me, maybe I'm too emotionally invested in people's journeys, but to see someone stand on stage and know that you've helped them get there. I mean, I just sit behind a laptop and tell people to do stuff, right? They do the hard work. But I remember seeing a client, one of my clients, Penny. She's amazing. All my clients are amazing, but I remember she was like my first lady that I got to the stage. And I remember watching her at a Two Bro show. I forget which one it was, and she was figure at the time. She's moved to women's physique. And I remember, and Penny's like 6'6", she's over 6 foot in her heels. And I remember watching her walk on stage and being like, fuck, Mike, that is so cool. Like, because she was just like a gazelle floating onto the stage. And I was like, that's one badass motherfucking bitch. You know what I mean? Like, just walking on stage. And I think that's the best thing when it comes to being a coach, is seeing people who love bodybuilding as much as I do, who want to progress, and being part of that journey. And I just think like I said, bodybuilding is all or nothing, and to work with people who have that same mindset is the best thing. But you also do need to be honest as a coach and be like, look, I don't think you fit this criteria. I don't think you do this. I think we just need to look at different avenues. Because I started in trained figure, and I just kind of progressed up from trained figure, and I think that maybe is a suitable direction for some people, because I know a couple of people have gone from bikini to women's physique. I know a couple of ladies that have done that. But yeah, your face. Yeah, like I know, I won't obviously name names, but I know a couple of people that have gone from bikini to women's physique, obviously over a period of time. But I think you need to work yourself up the ranks and then go to your ultimate goal. Because like I said, I started in train figure, had a couple of years off during COVID and stuff like that, and then fell into women's physique. Women's physique was always my dream, after seeing Dana Lynn Bailey on fucking YouTube and watching her win Miss Olympia and stuff. Like, I was like, you know, that is what I want to do. And I've always had the idea to do women's physique. So I wanted to start with, when obviously me and Tom met. I mean, I've been working with Tom like 9 years now. And we get a lot of time. It's basically the same amount of time as my relationship. So
this is a good message though, Sara. I'm sure you'll agree. I was with my first coach for 8 years because they learn your body, right? It's so sick.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, Tom knows my body better than anyone. And you know, it's so important that I mean, me and Tom are a little bit closer in the fact that I've known him for so long. Obviously he's godmother to his son and stuff like that. But when it comes to a professional relationship, you know, it's no holds barred. You know, I tell him this, he tells me that. He's like, we do this, we do that. And it's 9 years of knowing what works, what doesn't work, my mentality, you know, what I can do physically. Like, I'm notorious for pushing myself too far. If you tell me to do something, okay, hold my beer, I'm gonna fucking do it. Do you know what I mean? So, and you know, I think a lot of bodybuilders are that. I would take things to the extreme, if not a little bit too far, and he knows that. So he then adapts things based on my feedback, based on, okay, Sara's going to do a little bit more. So we'll base things around on what I assume that she's going to do, because I'm going to do it. Do you know what I mean? So the importance of staying with a coach, because we all know some people coach hop, they have 4, 5, 6 coaches in a year. Do you know what I mean? How would you expect to see progression when that coach can't get used to your body? So, and that's one thing that is so important, is if you're looking to get on stage, I would highly recommend having an off season with that coach, or a period of growth before going into prep, so that coach can learn what you're like as an individual, how your adherence is, because you know, you might be a little bit like, oh, I'll have a little bit here and there, but really when it comes to prep, you need to be aware that you can't do that. So it's about creating that relationship, being with that coach for an extended period of time, and then being able to be like, okay, I'm ready to prep because I know what you're like as a person. And I'm very, very lucky that Tom came into my life like he did, or when he did, because we've been able to create a career together. And I won't go anywhere else now. He's stuck with me forever, you know what I mean? And because he's believed in me from the very start. So it's kind of like, I've always envisioned this Neil Hill, Flex Lewis kind of relationship, where you've got that coach for 20 plus years and that is it. Do you know what I mean? So, and he's a massive part of my life outside of bodybuilding. You know, he's the reason I'm quite a good coach. He gave me the platform to be a good coach. you know, he's one of the reasons as to why I actually asked my missus to marry me. Obviously, outside of me wanting to, I remember going out to Cheltenham with Tom one day, being like, I'm gonna ask my missus to marry me. I'm gonna ask her to marry me. And he was like, well, we'll buy the ring today. And I was like, no, I don't want to buy it today. I just want to wait. And he's like, no, we're buying the ring today. And he took me to this ring shop, and I was like, why do you always fucking do this? Like, everything in my life you've done. And he's like, well, we're buying this ring. You're gonna ask her to marry you. And obviously 2 years later, asked me to marry me. But you know what I mean? Like, he's always had a massive positive impact into my life. And you know, he's taught me values as a coach. Obviously, you know, I'm surrounded by coach. My missus is a football coach, so she kind of puts her values on me as well. And he's taken the values that he's had a coach, pushed them down to me, and it's the importance of being actually, you know, yes, there are lines as a coach where, okay, that's your personal information. That is, you know, I don't want to overstep the mark with helping you in regards to personal things, but it's so important to have that relationship with clients to be like, do you want to come for a coffee? Like, because obviously you're going through a tough time. Like I always say to my clients, if you're having a tough time, talk to me. That's what I'm here for. Because again, I'm emotionally invested in that individual. And if I know you're not in the greatest place, okay, let's have a look at your mental health. Let's have a look at your well-being. Like, because I know what it's like to be in a dark place. And I've had previous coaches that have just pushed me to the ground. And I will never, ever do that to any of my clients. And Tom wouldn't do that to his either. So it's kind of just good values that have come down from being with him for a long period of time. And if you work with a good coach, have a good relationship, you can then bounce off each other. You can work out things. And that is so important. And that's just part and parcel of staying with a coach for an extended period of time. And don't get me wrong, like if you don't vibe with a coach, that's absolutely fine. But just say, sorry, mate, I don't vibe with you as an athlete and a coach. Like, and that's fine. If your coach is understanding, they'll be like, yeah, that's cool, mate. Like, do what works for you. Because I know quite a few coaches out there are a bit like, oh, why are you moving? Like, do you know what I mean? Like they're just a little bit negative. But if you don't vibe with a coach, that's fine. But just give them a little bit of time before you make that decision, because it's so important that you find what works for you. But yeah, it's you know, I'm very, very lucky to be in the situation that I am with Tom. I think he's a very, very massive part of my life, to be honest.
Yeah, well, he thinks the same about you because he spoke about you on the pod a fair amount, hence why I messaged you, because it's cool for the listeners to hear his point of view as to what he feels towards you. And then now we're obviously talking about your thoughts towards him, but it is certainly, you know, in this physique development realm, you said it exactly there. How are you meant to progress if you keep coach hopping? Or, you know, also if you're going to get a coach, I always recommend, you know, if you want to have multiple consultations, now you might pick up that vibe with the first one and it's like, fuck it, this is the coach for me. But have a look around. Don't rush it if it's something that you're not, you know, 100% sure on. But it's, you know, people go, oh, but, you know, I think this is the right coach for me. I'm not really sure. And it's like, you sort of know, I think, personally, it's like,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and it's,
And even like talking to people during consultations, and they're like, you know what, like I'm just having a bit of a look around. And yeah, absolutely. Go and have a look, go and speak to people, go and have a chat with people. Like, I'm not going to sit here on the phone, but like, you have to sign up with me, because I'm not that kind of person. Let's be frank. Like, I'd much rather you actually go away, have a think about it, speak to some other people, speak to some of my clients, like really get a vibe for that coach. Like I've literally, you know, I said to people, like, if you want to know what I'm like as a coach, speak to my clients. I've got nothing to hide. And I know that my clients will give you an honest and upfront answer. So if you are someone that's looking for a coach, then ask that coach's clients, okay, how are they? What are they like as a coach? Like, are their response times good? Are they good when it comes to the little things like well-being and stuff like that? Like, so yeah, absolutely have a look around, try and find someone that works for you, and speak to their clients, because if they've got nothing to hide, then they'll be like, go and speak to my clients, you know.
For sure, for sure. Now, you mentioned that you had some sort of bad coaching experiences, as it were. How did you find that hit you mentally, being able to sort of come away from a coaching relationship? Because I know some of the listeners do find it quite difficult.
Yeah, so obviously I won't name names, but anyone close to me knows who this was. So I was, oh God, I can't remember how old I was. I must have been 14 or 15. No, I think I was a little bit younger actually. But I got invested in this coach, and he sold me the world. And at that time, you know, I was starstruck. I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that. Like, things had really started kicking off. My mental health was a little bit down the drain when I was younger anyway, because unfortunately I lost my mum when I was 10 years old, and it was quite a, she had I can't remember what it's called. something. She had it's basically, it was really sudden, and I obviously didn't have her when I was growing up, so my mental health was quite poor for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And I just threw myself into sport. I've always been sporty, so it was my outlet for a long, long time. I had quite a few anger issues as I was younger, so I got into boxing and stuff like that. And the gym was my safe place. And this opportunity popped up, and I was like, oh, great! Like let's get started. So got started, paid for 3 months up front with this coach, and everything was fine. It was moving as it should. And then things progressed, and the contact from this coach got less and less and less and less. And he wasn't cheap. So I worked quite a lot when I was younger because I like to work. So I got this little pot of money, I put it into this coach. And then the second payment came around, and I was like, Dad, are you okay to buy this for me for my birthday? So that's my dad's money now being thrown into the pot. And the contact got less and less. And in the end, I was like, okay, this is a bit strange. Like, I think I kind of want my money back because I've not heard from this coach for months. So I rang this guy up. I was like, and this is like a young girl on the phone to what was quite a big person. He was obviously they were quite big personality and stuff like that. And I was like, look, I haven't heard from you. I need my money back because I'm a young kid. Like, that money, and it's also my dad's money. So you're not only taking my money, but you're taking my father's as well.
Yeah.
And then he just exploded on the phone. He was like, you're a fat, ugly lesbian. It's not going anywhere. You're just a C word was thrown around a few times. And I was like, whoa. And he was like, you can't have a refund. You're big fat cuck. And I was like, wow, like, okay. And from then, like, my confidence was shot. I just didn't know what to do. I was like, well, okay, maybe he is right. Maybe I am just that fat, ugly lesbian that's not going anywhere, you know? And for a young girl who had I idolized this person, and he sold me everything. He sold me, like, you're gonna be awesome, you do this, you know. And at that time, because I was so naive, I was like, shit, like that's completely just ruined me. So I didn't train for weeks because I felt like I really was going nowhere. And what's the point in trying to drive this if I don't think, or other people think I'm not ready for it? And that for me, like, really just threw me back. And I was already in a bad place. And for that, I was just like, you know, I think this was a couple of years before I met Tom. It must have been. And yeah, and it was so disheartening to find, you know, that someone I thought really believed in me as a person just was really in it for the money. And he was, it was abusive. He wasn't nice. He did inappropriate things with my best friend. Like, it was kind of, it was just a bit of a mess. And for that, and I understand why people find it hard to leave their coach, because I tried and I got that in my face.
Yeah.
And it was so bad that I was going to get the police involved. You know, if I recorded that phone call,
Yeah.
they would be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't, because it's not worth it. So, you know, I think I completely get why people struggle to leave their coach, because again, it happened to me. And from that, I will never, ever forget that, because it's an experience that really pushed me quite far back when I was a young woman, like, and it just was shit. So, yeah. And I think coaches that don't, you see it a lot in the industry now, where coaches are quite standoffish when it comes to either talking about changes to a plan. If a client comes to me and they're like, look, Sar, that squat is just not working. Okay, let's move it around. All right, let's adapt the training program. It's my job to adapt the program to that individual's lifestyle, right?
Sure.
And some coaches are like, no, you have to have squats in your plan because that is how Tom Platt's built his legs. Do you know what I mean? Like, and people are just not listening. So, and if someone came to me and was like, look, Sar, this just ain't working, like, and I'd be like, cool, okay, give me some feedback on what I could have done better, if there is anything, and then go and find someone that works for you, because you want to do better in your career. And if I'm not that link, then that's cool. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that is so important, because your professionalism will carry you. People be like, oh, you know, that's Sara Bradley. Oh, she was actually all right as a coach. Or, oh, you know, that's Sara Bradley. She absolutely hooned me as a coach. You know what I mean? Like, and that memory of what I had to experience with that previous coach, that'll sit with me forever. And it, you know, when I do speak to people about it, and people who know who it was, they're like, yeah, I know exactly what you went through. And it was rubbish, because he sold me the world, and I just a naive kid that wanted some guidance, and I just didn't get that. I just got all thrown back in my face. So yeah, it was a bit shit.
Yeah, for sure. I actually saw one of your posts about, you know, dealing with the one I shared on my story about sort of some changes in your circle of, and you're thinking, you know, people are going to be there and have your back, and then that does change. And it's something I personally have been through a fair amount of times. And it sounds, you have recently, it's really, really tough, isn't it, when you feel invested in someone, whether that's bodybuilding or family or friends or whatever it is, a coach, you know, to actually have you invest so much in someone and then they sort of throw it back in your face or whatever. When you come across things, you know, in life, and when your clients sort of come across this type of external pressure, you know, if they're changing relationships or whatever it is, do you have certain advice that you would give people that are suffering mentally with, you know, coming away from people?
So I'm a huge advocate of you are a product of your environment. So if there is something that is a small amount of negativity in your life, get rid of it. And I will be as brutal as I need to be. I remember doing a podcast with Rachel Daniels, and she said, you know what, blood or not, if you're hindering my progress, you're out.
Yeah.
And I know it's easier said than done for a lot of people, but if someone is causing you to feel sad, negative, like you're not progressing, they're just pushing this negative aura on you, they're a pessimist, get them out of your life. It's not worth it. Life's too short to be sat here having someone sort of just throw their negativity on you. I think, and I say that to all of my clients if they're going through a rough time or they're in an environment that doesn't benefit you or benefit them. I'm like, get out. Just don't. And I know that, like I said, it's easier said than done, but you don't need that. And that is what is causing you to not progress, is you're stuck in this negative little hole and you need to get out of it. And we're going to work together to get out of it. All of my clients, I always tell them, look, at the end of their check-in sheets, they have a silver lining point, and it says silver linings, what's gone well this week, and what are you proud of? Because in my opinion, there is a silver lining in fucking everything, right? So you could say to me, oh, you know, so I've had a really fucking shit week. This is, you know, gym wasn't very good. You know, meals were a little bit all over the place. I'm like, right, okay, there's a silver lining right there. You went to the gym still. You still got it done. Yes, those sessions weren't very good, but you still went. And I say that to everyone, like, silver linings are in every situation. And if you find that you are in an environment that doesn't benefit you, remove yourself from that situation, try and put yourself into a more positive environment. Think about the silver linings of moving from that negative environment to the positive and see how that benefits you. Yes, it may be hard to move away from that environment that you were previously once in, but once you remove yourself from that situation, think about how much more you're going to develop as an individual than if you had stayed in that negative environment. And don't get me wrong, my circle has changed over the years, and it's got smaller and smaller and smaller, but I've now refined it to a point where I only have these people and I know these people are going to benefit me because that's what I need. And Tom's one of them, my fiance is one of them, and obviously now Mike and Alicia from GAT is one of them, and that's all I need. And those people are going to benefit me. And when you get to a professional level, I don't have the time to be faffing around with people who are going to put such pessimistic ideals in my head. Because when I'm in prep, I don't want that. I need focus, I need positivity, I need everything that's going to benefit me in the long run. Obviously, I'm someone that wants to see other people do well and I want to benefit them. So if there's any way I can help Tom and if I can help Mike and Alicia, then I will do. But that's my circle. And I know that circle is going to push me to ideally the Olympia in the next couple of years. And I know that's where I need to be. So I'm a massive advocate of someone that is a product of their own environment. And like I said to earlier, if you are in an environment that's not benefiting you at all, just remove yourself, blood or not. It's not worth it and it will hinder your progress.
Yeah, for sure. And that goes with, you know, when you're in a intimate relationship, you know, when things start to happen over a relationship, you know, what generally builds resentment. And like you said, that first coach that called you a fat lesbian, you know, personal attacks. It's surprising how many people I get reach out from the podcast when I've spoke about my own experiences where, you know, their partner's calling them fat or whatever, you know, these types of things and the personal attacks that start. But essentially that's environment, isn't it? And it's like, if that person isn't your number one fan, then for me, it's like you do need to gravitate away from that. However, I've been in relationships where it's like you sort of put up with it, don't you? But over time, it does, you know, when we're looking at physique development, it can impact that heavily, can't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you're in a stressful environment, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to progress because stress is such a massive hit on the body. If you're always in a stressful environment, you won't be able to progress because there's so many other factors that are stopping you from progressing. So by removing yourself out of that environment, the reduction in stress will be massive, and that's when you'll see the progress because you're not stressed.
Yeah, for sure. Now, we said, obviously, you mentioned there about in prep, obviously, you want people helping you to that tunnel vision, etc. Now, you're currently in off season, and I believe you're going to be doing an off season, especially for the rest of this year, before you would look to compete potentially next year. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the plan as it stands. I'm not going to sit here and say
Yeah,
that may stay in stone, but
yeah.
but never say never. But that is the plan as it stands. Obviously we have that UK show, which I might dabble in. It really depends on whether I feel I've made the improvements that I feel are necessary to get those top placings. But I've spoken to Tom about it, and whether it's an option that we might just go and have a bit of a run out again this year, maybe, but never say never. And that's the beauty of bodybuilding, is we just adapt, overcome, and see what the plan is. But as it stands, it is just an off season to improve the areas that I've been asked to improve, and I'm not going back to being like, I kind of improved. I want to go back and be like, she's fucking improved, and she's listened to what I've asked for as a judge. So that's the plan at the moment.
Yeah, because of course, as we know, a longer off season is going to lend itself to gaining that quality muscle tissue for sure.
Absolutely.
And did I read on one of your posts it's mainly legs and lower back? Was that right? Where you're
So when I competed in Texas, obviously, I've had the opportunity to be judged by Tyler Mannion quite a few times, and he's always said, lower back, essentially more lower back, glutes, hamstrings just need to come up. And I got judged by Bill something in Alicante, and he said glutes, hamstrings, and lower back. So that's what the primary focus of this off season has been, is just it is mainly density, which yes does come with age, but if we can try and get density over the sort of courses of my off season just by correct drug protocols, nutrition, food, nutrition, training, that kind of thing, then absolutely. But that was my main feedback over the past couple of years, and it's been the same feedback year on, so that's why I kind of thought, what, fuck it, like I'm not gonna have a 3 to 4 month off season or whatever it may be, when I could have a longer off season and make the changes. And this is why I also changed my training coach last year, from a guy called Conor McMillan, who was a massive part of my life for 4 years. And then I obviously stepped away and joined Mike and Licia, predominantly Licia because she does my training. But if something is not working, and and to get the same feedback year on year, something's not working. So what can I try and do that's going to change? And that was my training. I think Conor McMillan is amazing. He was a massive part of my life. He turned me pro and all that, or had aid in turning me pro. But from there, I think it's not necessarily about, I built my base, I built my foundation. Now it's about refining. It's about longevity, refining that physique, getting bigger, but symmetry and proportions are what we need. So we've built the foundation of clay. We just need to add the clay on where we need to. And I think that was something that I didn't take into account, was the longevity, the importance of longevity. And I'm bigger now. I'm only 27, but still age plays a part, where my recovery is not as good as it was when I was 20. I mean, I would spend hours in the gym smashing my joints to pieces, whereas now I just can't do that. So that was the main feedback, and those are kind of the small changes that I've made going forward. And I just felt that a longer off season is more appropriate to make those changes, because every year, same feedback, and I was like, well, something needs to change. So whether that be the length of off season, whether that be the training, because my nutrition and my drug protocols are pretty much good. Obviously, I've got Tom for that, and Tom to help me with that. But you've got to think about what needs to change, and whether that's just sheer time amount or length of time, or training or something like that, then that's what we kind of taken into account and we changed around.
Yeah, for sure. And with the PED protocols now, of course, as you progress, and particularly in the more heavily muscled divisions, there's going to be more exposures, more anabolics, generally speaking, right? So you've obviously got your bikini, and working your way up, and then the risk of masculinization, virilization potentially is more on the cards. Is that something that you sort of, when you went down the assisted route, had that like, okay, so I need to weigh up the risk versus reward? How did you sort of tackle that when you went into using PEDs?
Yeah, so when I was younger, obviously I was natural for quite a long time. I kind of only really started dabbling in PDs when I was like 18, 19. Well, I think I got into powerlifting around 18 and just did like a little tiny cycle of Osterine and then did a tiny cycle of Anavar. And then I was at university for 3 years. So I didn't really cycle during university because obviously I played football and stuff like that. So I finished university, then got back into the swing of things. That's when I competed in my first year. That's when I was training figure. And when I saw Dana and Bailey and when I saw these women and I knew that I wanted to be up on the Olympia stage, and through my own kind of, research and looking into things, I was always very anti-steroid, right? I was always like, no, never gonna do that, always gonna be natural. And then I was like, oh, maybe maybe where I need to get to, I need to start kind of dabbling and stuff like that. And luckily I've been surrounded by people who are very good in the area of female PEDs, but thinking of, I didn't jump straight in. I eased myself into it, did the research, spoke to people like Tom and stuff like that. And, speaking to people, you kind of understand the risk over reward. But I'm a firm believer that to get to the Olympia stage, it's something that needs to happen. And I think a lot of people don't understand that there are a lot of drugs in sport, regardless of whether it's bodybuilding or not. Do you know what I mean? I mean, only recently they've been talking about doing the enhanced Olympics, right? So it's kind of like, and I think bodybuilding gets such a bad rap, even though, when it comes to health markers, we're more on top of our blood work nowadays. Sourcing the PEDs themselves is much safer than what it used to be. So, it's all these things that come into account when you kind of think about jumping on board. Now, I cannot emphasize enough the fact that my nutrition is bang on, my training is bang on, my recovery is bang on. Obviously, could probably stretch a little bit more, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah.
But the PDs are simply a cherry on top. And again, I held my nutrition for a long, long time and still do. And I'm proud of the fact that I can be consistent with things like that. But if I can use less drugs, the better. But I know it's part of this journey and I know the risk when it comes to it. And I knew the risk before I started it, after having countless conversations with Tom about it. Just being aware that, things can change. But for me, like as long as I can control things, things are inevitable. Like I get that. Like, for example, when I'm being open and honest, I get a little bit of hair on my chin nowadays. But what female doesn't? You know what I mean? Like, it's just I'm speaking to women, they're like, yeah, I get hair on my chin anyway. You know what I mean? But that for me doesn't bother me. I know that's what's going to happen. And I'm very lucky in, touch wood, that I don't really experience too many side effects. Like, I'm not too bothered about little changes. Obviously, I don't want my voice to be fucking, like a man's voice or anything like that. But if it drops a touch, I'm not too bothered. But that's just who I am as an individual, because I know it's going to come with the PEDs. But if I can control it as much as possible, then that's what I'm going to do. And that was kind of another reason why I did a longer off season, was because I can have a harsher cycle over a shorter period of time and just pummel the drugs and make vast improvements. Or I can have a longer off season, use less drugs, utilize more food, more things like growth hormone, insulin, things that aren't going to add to those visualization of females or have any other risk in regards to my face or my voice or whatever.
Yeah.
And just have a little bit of longer time utilizing things that aren't going to visualize my face or my voice or whatever, and just be smart about it. So yeah, so coming back to the original question, like I said, I was very lucky to be around people that would tell me, right, so like you need to be aware of things like this. But if you want to take things seriously going forward, then it may just be a route that you have to go down. And I understood that. And when I was ready to, I was never ever forced into it at all. No one should ever be forced into it. But I was like, okay, I'm ready to take that leap. And here we are, however many years later, a professional bodybuilder who wants to get on this Olympic stage in the next 2 to 3 years. So yeah, I think you just have to weigh out what your ultimate goal is. And arguably, some people may, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I'm a firm believer that if you're not getting on stage, you shouldn't be taking PEDs. And I am a firm believer of that, because like you said, and coming back to risk versus reward, why would you put that risk on yourself to not get on stage? And I don't understand. I mean, yes, there's photo shoots and stuff, but there are so much more people don't see that you can achieve naturally. I mean, some of these natural athletes are unbelievable. I mean, I went to a show a couple of years ago, the UK DBFA show, And some of these natural athletes shit on assisted athletes. Like, I mean, some of these boys, even the grandmasters, these like guys that are like 60 plus, are more shredded than I've ever seen any professional athlete. Like, and you think, and I think, oh, I'll just jump on PDs because shits and gigs. You can achieve so much naturally. And I think, you know, if you're not someone that's getting on stage, it's not worth, especially women, why are you taking PDs if you're not getting on stage? Like, what is it worth? Why are you putting yourself? And then you'll complain later down the line that my voice is a bit different, or I've got hair on my chin, or because you didn't understand the risks. So I think a lot of people need to really weigh up things. And if you're getting on stage, understand the risk versus reward, and then kind of appropriately apply PD cycles if you need them. But if you're someone that doesn't get on stage, or it just wants to get it for shits and gigs, or wants to look, you know, biggest pet peeve is people that are like, I don't do a cycle just to look good on the beach in Ibiza. What's the fucking point? You're gonna go out and drink and smoke and all that bullshit, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always thought that, but yeah, I think it's just so important that you do understand the risk versus reward, what your ultimate goal is, what you want to get out of being a bodybuilder, whether that be stage or not, or whatever. But as a female, I cannot emphasize enough, know exactly what you're doing, be around the right people, know exactly where you're sourcing things from, because it's really common that a lot of our, like, Anavar is heavily faked, and it can be typically faked for something like D-bol, which as a woman, it's not good. So it's knowing what you're sourcing from, surrounding yourself with people that are open and honest about the risks versus reward when it comes to PDs, and having everything in line before you even contemplate jumping on board into a cycle.
Yeah, for sure. Because also there's different compounds, isn't there? So I saw that you were using Primo. Now that's something I've tried, and then I've tried exposures on Anavar, and I found that I get on better with Anavar. So there's examples like that where it's like, okay, so if you're going to do something like an exposure, you can work with your coach to try something, and if for any reason you think maybe I'll try something else, and understand what this involves, and also over time, right? So you might get away with using something for an extended period of time, but you're over time, you're going to potentially cause that risk versus reward to increase, because, you know, it's not just, well, I've got away with it before, because you could be at that tipping point, you implement it again, suddenly you you know, masculinize. And it's a tricky conversation with people that haven't been advised properly, because they're in shit street because they've already done X amount of time on something like Anavar at 20 milligrams a day or whatever, and they're like, well, I thought that was normal, you know.
I mean, I had this conversation with someone the other day, and they were saying, yeah, I've been on, and this was a male, and he said, oh, yeah, you know, I've been running like a small little cycle of train and test and stuff, and I obviously asked him his dosages and things, and I was like, okay, so how's your eating? I don't even know. He said to me, oh, I've not really been seeing much from this cycle, and I was like, okay, so with the dosages that's telling me you should be seeing something.
Yeah.
So what's your eating like? What's your training like? I don't really, you know, my eating's not really that great. You know, I go out drinking with the boys sometimes, and I'm like, there you go. Like, so why are you even thinking about adding a compound as dangerous as tren onto someone that typically goes out drinking with the boys on the weekend and stuff? Like, it makes no sense to me, but it is what it is, you know.
It's so wild. And also, like you said there, you know, everything's in place to then use PDs. This is what I truly believe. It's like, it's a performance enhancement. It's not a prop up. You're not trying to, you know, fill in holes and mask things. And if you keep trying to do that and keep exposing yourself to anabolics, you know, like you say, tren, like how bad can the side effects get on something like that, right? It's fucking wild.
Yeah, exactly. So to put yourself in a position where you're not eating, you're not training hard enough, and then to add something as dangerous as tren is just, it's just stupid. It's just stupid.
And have you always found that you can be quite open and honest, obviously with your partner, but does your dad know? How is that?
So when it comes to like family, my partner's obviously, yeah, that's exactly it. Like, they know. I haven't outright told them, but I'm sure they put two and two together, because I don't know. I've never really had that conversation. But at the beginning of my career, I was quite kind of standoffish because I didn't want anyone to know, admittedly. Whereas now I couldn't give a fuck. Like, if you want to ask me those questions, and you want to, my dad approached me and said, look, Sara, do you use anabolic steroids? I'm like, yeah. But he's obviously got this horrible like connotation around steroids that they're they're a bad thing. The minute you start taking steroids, you will be a man in a matter of hours. Do you know what I mean? And it's just a lack of education.
Yeah.
So if I can educate my family around the use of steroids and what I do and how safe I am with them, then that's what I want to be doing. My partner, she's really supportive. Obviously, again, she's like, just be safe, don't be an idiot with what you use, because she understands. It'd be different if I was a football player. She'd be like, you're an idiot,
Yeah,
but
what's the
because
point?
yeah. But she was like, it's just part of bodybuilding, and if you need to do that, then you need to do that, and I'll support you, keeping you safe and stuff like that. I'm very, very lucky in the fact that me and my partner have been together almost 9 years now. So it's kind of like she's been with me from the moment I stepped on stage to now. And we've been through 2 lockdowns, been through fucking 4 or 5 shows. Like, she's been through everything with me. So it's kind of like she knows bodybuilding. I mean, she could probably peak me when if Tom couldn't be there or whatever. She could probably peak me as well as Tom could. Because she's been through there. She's been backstage with me every time. She supported me through every prep, and I, having that person there that just gets it is a game changer when it comes to PDs. Because a lot of I previously had a partner and she wasn't really into it, and I was like, well, that's the lack of support that I need to get to where I need to. And yeah, I'm very, very, very lucky to have the support from my partner that I do. Yeah.
I always, it's like with clients, I'm sure that you're the same, being transparent with your partner, I believe it is a big thing, right?
Massively. Yeah, massively. Yeah. Because
Especially,
you put her through so much shit anyway, so I might as well just be transparent about it.
for sure. Now, one of
Yeah.
your followers asked you about if you've used a compound that you'd never use again. Is there any that you've used and you're like, I ain't fucking using that again?
Me and Tom did a couple of cycles of MPP or Hunky Dory, and then I remember prepping for Reno, and we did a cycle of MPP. It was only like 60 minutes a week. It was like really nothing for a professional women's physique competitor anyway.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't do it. MPP, because obviously it's the Norm 19, can have profound impacts on mental state, mental well-being, that kind of thing. And I just remember it's the first time I was like lying. There was a lot of issues with that prep anyway. A lot of personal things popped up, and it just wasn't the smoothest of preps that I've ever had. And I just remember like lying in bed, and for me to say I've had enough that's even my missus was like, for you to say that is there's something going on here. I just remember lying in bed being like, I could jump off a bridge and not give a fuck. Like, I'm ready to just end it all. And I said to Tom, I was like, Tom, I'm not in a good place, mate. I'm struggling and I'm really questioning whether I'm ready for this. And he was like, what's changed? And I was like, well, we added in MPP like a week or so ago, and I've just fucking just crumbled. He was like, take that out. And ever since I did, I was back on where I needed to be. But MPP, just after that cycle, no, I won't go near it again. That really, for me to not give a fuck like I did then, it took me back to when I was like, in a really bad place after mum passed away. And I was just like, I'm never going back to that. So that's why I predominantly use Primo now, because I get on with it really well. But MPP, it's weird because those first couple cycles were fine, but it was just that one cycle that just tipped me over. I don't know why it did that, and Tom doesn't even know why it did that either. But yeah, absolutely not going near that.
Well, it could, I guess, thinking out loud, it could be almost like because you used it a few times already, maybe that
Possibly.
exposure, multiple exposures. But it sounds similar to what you get from Tren, right? Like,
Yeah,
what was described
absolutely.
as like, I mean, when Matt he did like only 3 weeks, because it got to the point where it was like, this is weird. Like, it was like he was like a different person. He was like
Yeah.
fading away, and I'm like your partner describes to you.
Yeah.
What the fuck is going on? And that's why
Yeah.
it's important to obviously talk to your partner about it, because otherwise, how do they know what's happening as well,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And changes in like just who you are as a person, like you're just a shell at that point. And I was just like, nah, something's going on here. And she was like, I think she even messaged Tom and was like, something's going on here, like something's just not right. And yeah, just to have that communication and let them know what's going on, it's just so they can maybe speak up when you might not be able to. So yeah, really, really important when it comes to communication and PDs and stuff like that. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And then, of course, on top of that, when you go down the assisted route, the organization of that. So you mentioned about obviously sourcing it, but then, pinning multiple times a day or using orals as well, or however your sort of makeup is of what PEDs you're going to use. I think sometimes that's important to talk about as well, because people see this as like, oh, you just do a quick pin and whatever, but there's actually sort of guidelines and safety that you do need to consider when pinning, as the example.
Yeah, absolutely. I think quite a common thing now when it comes to pinning is doing the microdosing kind of style pinning process, where you microdose your cycle or your injectables, whatever, and pin every day. I mean, people said it just keeps things, side effects a little bit less, because you're steadier with your, when you jab, you may have peaks and troughs. So just to keep that a little bit more steady via microdosing through the week is just a little bit better. I don't microdose, but it is something that I want to put into play for the very reason of side effects. I typically only really pin twice a week. Even at my peak dosages, I'll only pin twice a week. But again, it is something that I should probably be implementing. I hate jabbing. I cannot stand it. It's the bane of my life. Hence why I don't microdose. But I get all my clients, the majority of my clients who do cycle to microdose. But myself, I just haven't done it, and it's something that I need to do. It's just the laziness of jabbing. I just hate it. But
Well,
yeah,
as a bodybuilder, there's so many boxes to tick, and now I know you probably just boss it, and it's second nature, of course, to get to this level and do it as you do. But when you sort of first started out, were you always this like on it and organized and just hitting your macros and doing what you need to do, or did you ever find it a struggle in any way?
No, I to be fair, like I've always been like this, and arguably, actually, and it sounds really strange, when I was younger, I was probably more on it, which is really weird. Like before university, I'd be like, nope, never drinking, never doing anything. And then obviously I got to university and was basically alcohol for the whole 3 years. And then obviously got into bodybuilding back after university. But now, like, I'll allow myself meals out with family. I'll allow myself, like, I don't really drink, but if I do drink, I'll have a drink like on New Year's Eve or something. And I'm a little bit more kind of, again, a little bit looser with meals out and stuff. Obviously I still get my food and my training done, but I'm not as on it as I used to be, because I just thought, that's it, that is what I need to do. And it's got me to where I am now. But one thing prep has taught me is the importance of family and the importance of taking the time for people that are a massive part of your life. And because prep takes so much, it requires every ounce of not only me, but my partner, my family, my sponsors, people around me, like Mike, Lisa, Tom. And if I can give an ounce of something back to those people, and that's going out for dinner. Like I took Tom out for dinner the other day. Like that is way more important than being like, I'll take my Tupperware to the restaurant. In prep, don't get me wrong, it's very different. But in an off season, you have the capabilities to move some food around, allow for your time to go and have some time with people. And I say this to a couple of clients, like, look, you're in an off season, your time will come when it comes to prep. But if you want to go out for food, allow me, I'll move some calories around for you to go out and have some food. Life is too short to be sat at a dinner table in your off season watching everyone else eat your roast dinner and you sat here with your Tupperware. Like, I just, I think, like I said, prep's taught me that life is too short. You never know what's going to happen around the corner. Like a couple of years, my dad got diagnosed with like a bone cancer, and it was kind of like, he's an older man. He's coming up to 70 now, and I don't know what's going to happen around the corner, right? So if I'm in my off season, he wants to go out and have a drink and a roast dinner, whatever, I'm gonna do that, because when he passes away, I'm like, oh, I miss those memories with my dad because I was too busy eating stuff in my Tupperware. And like, this isn't me saying that, if you're someone that likes to do that, likes to be regimented 24/7 all the time, that is absolutely fine. But I'm a firm believer that because I allow myself some flexibility in my off season, I perform the way I do in my preps, because I've allowed myself to rest, recover, have a solid off season, create memories with people that simply take a back seat when I'm prepping, give some time to my partner, allow her to steady her career, because she wants to go and be a UAFB coach in women's football. And she's so busy sort of cleaning up after me that she doesn't necessarily. And my missus is, I mean, I could talk all day about her, to be honest, is the most selfless person I've ever met in my life, because she's given me 9 years of everything. And if I can have a year off and give her some time back, then I'm going to do that. I'm still going to progress. I'm still going to eat my meals. I'm still going to train hard. But if she wants to go and watch Man City play football, then we're going to go and watch Man City play football. You know what I mean? Like, and I just think that is so important. I mean, yes, it's down to the individual, but if you speak to like Sophie Jenkins, who's obviously an IFBB figure, she's very similar in the same as my off season. She'll go out, have some food, and no, she gets fucking shredded in her
As do
in
you.
her prep. Yeah, and I'm a firm believer. And obviously off season is important, get the fundamentals done. But if you want to go out, fucking go out and have a chill time. Like that is so important. So important because life is too short. And yes, we get the work done when we stand on stage. And yeah, you could argue this whole balance thing, but I'm not going to go down that route because
Yeah.
it's just a bit of a wet route, you know?
Yeah. And like you said there, those individuals, you know, it's trying to work out what's the best for the individual at the current stage of their off season. If it's their first off season, you know, what you need to do to bring them up as a coach to give them the confidence to eat out and, you know, being wary around certain things, you know, if there are triggers or they struggle with things. This is things that we do as coaches, isn't it? And we've learned from our own experience, you know, things can go south after a show and things like this, but then
Absolutely.
you know, obviously we can then nurture people that are going through different phases, because that's quite hard, isn't it? You know, when you do your first competitive season and then suddenly off season, it's like, holy shit, it's wild, right?
Yeah. I mean that I say this to everyone about, you know, for a first timer, that first show, it's the best show ever, but it will be your hardest show ever because you don't know what to expect, right? My post show after my first show was horrendous. It was like that typical like hoarding loads of food, biscuits, chocolate, and I didn't even eat any of it. You know what I mean? Because you're so like full from eating everything else. Like,
So
but
weird,
yeah,
because your hunger,
yeah.
obviously, like obviously the hunger hormones are affected, and you know if you get pretty diced, it's like they're gonna be right, but you can just eat, can't you? And you're just like, this is not satiating me. I want
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's mad. And I think it's just preparing people for that after their shows and allowing them sort of and being like, right, you're going to be hungry, but no amount of food is going to satiate that hunger. So just fucking here's the plan, follow the plan, and just go from there. But yeah, that first experience for show was just mad.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Now, one of the listeners also asked about how you sort of mentally, how you feel when you're gaining weight for an off season. And I've got to give you a compliment from my other half, Matt. He was saying, you know, you're one of the only female athletes that he's seen on Instagram that's like, do you know what? We're gaining an off season and I'm proud of my physique, you know, and you documenting the whole phase rather than dipping in and out when, you know, just showing when you're lean. And it's certainly something that I don't think we see that much of. You know, people do share off season and what have you, but you seem to have a bit of banter with it as well. Now, have you found you get more confident over the years of doing it, where it's like, I'm going to need to accept putting on weight?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I always used to be someone that used to hide away,
Yeah.
but now because I've got an amazing platform of people who support me and follow me and stuff like that, and I think it's so important to show every stage because an off season is as important as a prep. Do you know what I mean? Like this is where my muscle will be built, and if I don't take what I need to take in regards to food and stuff too seriously because I'm too scared of gaining weight, then I'm not going to be able to make the improvements that I need to make. Now I'm someone that I like being bigger. I like being a little bit more hefty because my performance in the gym is better. I'm happier. You know, I like being bigger. And I'm not saying I don't like being shredded, but if I was to pick one, I prefer to be bigger, you know? And I think, yes, I get comments about being fat and all that rubbish. And I had, you know, a few people say I was fat in my off season last year, blah, blah, blah. But, and I good joke, yeah. And like I typically like I hold quite a lot of my cheeks, but this is my normal face, right? Like the only reason my cheeks look like this is because my face is so bad in prep. Like this is my normal face.
Yeah.
Whereas our faces get so like swollen, like so like sunken in. That's not a healthy face. Like, so my face looks fat because my face is so sunken in prep. It's the same with anyone. You'll speak to anyone, they'll be like, oh, my face is so fat. Like, no, that is a normal face. Like, so yeah, and it's just it's mad. But for me, I think it's so important that everyone sees the side of things because why would I constantly show you all my shredded photos when what happens behind the scenes is what is the result of that on stage. So, and a lot of ladies message me like, thank you for sharing me your off season. Thank you for sharing the fact that you have love handles and shit like that, because I'm a human. Like, yeah, I need to grow. I need to be in a surplus, and with surplus comes a change in composition. I can't be shredded all year round, because why would I want to stand on stage next year with the same package because I was too scared to put on weight? And obviously, it is a daunting thing. Like, you know, a couple of my ladies are like, you know, it's quite scary being in a surplus and knowing that I want to see the scale go up, and you know, competition does get a little bit, you know, touch and go, but it's all for a purpose. I wouldn't put something for an off season, or I wouldn't push, like, for example, my food's quite high at the moment, but I wouldn't push my food to a point of, you know, without a purpose. There's always a purpose to everything I do. So yes, I'm a little bit, you know, my love handles are a little bit bigger. Like, I've got a little bit, I mean, I'm very lucky in the fact that I have all abs all year round, but I've had abs since I came out of the womb. You know, I'm just very lucky because I've just genetically gifted in that area. And that normally is a point, if my abs start to kind of become a little bit softer, that's when I know that I need to kind of pull back. But, you know, it's showing ladies that there is not just the prep side of things, but also an off-season side of things, that you need to get a little bit comfortable with being bigger. But when it comes to the stage, it's going to be night and day different, because you took your off-season to that point where you're growing, you're strong, able to fuel those sessions, able to push yourself in those sessions. And when it comes to you being on stage, that off-season where you felt a little bit uncomfortable, those are the progressions that you'll see on stage. And even though some people may go through some tough times and think, oh, I look really fat today, yeah, but you won't look fat on stage because you'll have made those improvements. Everything has a purpose. And I think if you're purpose driven, I'm very purpose driven. Everything I think, okay, so this rep's gonna think, okay, that's gonna make my legs look bigger when I'm on stage. Like, this meal is gonna make me look bigger when do you know what I mean? So there's always a purpose behind everything we do, and showing people that, you know, my physique in my off season allows women to be like, oh, if Sara can do it, then maybe I can push my food a little bit higher. So I always think about, you know, being honest and open and being like, yeah, I'm bigger today and I have love handles, but I'm also a human and I'm also growing to make the improvements that I need to make on stage. Because if I'm not making those improvements, what's the point in coming back every year, you know? So it is really, really important. And now you kind of mention it, I don't really see, outside of Romana, I know Romana does some off-season updates and stuff, which is awesome. I don't really think that many girls do those off-season updates. Even some of the pros you don't really see do off-season updates. So it's really, really important to show every side of a bodybuilder. Just if I can help someone gain a little bit of confidence in their off-season physique, then that's what I'm going to do. Even if I get called fat all the time, then it's fine.
How do you find with, like, you know, if you get trolled or whatever? Because I know that obviously social media can be a very, very cool thing. Like, we wouldn't have connected without it, right? So there's positives, and you have your followers that look up to you and what have you. But if you get comments and things like this, does that ever affect you, or you just like, I don't fucking care, or how do you sort of deal with that?
It used to really affect me, like, massively. And don't get me wrong, it still does some days. I do sometimes be like, oh, you know what? I'm just tired of people saying things. I just take it with a pinch of salt now, because at the end of the day, I do this for me. I don't do this for fucking anyone else. I don't do this for Steve, who thinks I look like a bloke on Instagram. I couldn't give a fuck. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone, especially with the type of followers I have now, I'm very lucky to have, you know, predominantly a very lovely fan base. But you're gonna get the weirdos that are like, you know, you look like a man, blah, blah, blah. I've had quite a few comments about, why is that man wearing a bra, that kind of thing. But like, at the end of the day, I don't give a fuck about what he thinks or what anyone thinks, because if you don't like this, why the fuck are you on my page? Just fuck off, you know. And a lot of people, especially maybe certain types that follow people on Instagram, think that, you know, women should be this way. I'm who I am. And I made a post on femininity the other day and the importance of exploring your own femininity. Who's to say femininity is one thing? Like, my femininity is who I am as a person. It's why I pose the way I do on stage, because I'm not a flowy kind of prancy person. I like to have that powerful punch on stage. I like to be remembered for the girl that did an intense, you know, a good routine on stage that displays who I am as a person. It's why I pose the way I do. It's why I perform the way I do, because my femininity is different from, I don't like wearing makeup. I don't wear dresses. I don't do that kind of thing, because that's how I've always been quite tomboy. And why would I try and be someone I'm not to please other people? So always be proud of who you are, because I spent years trying to hide that. And now I'm like, you know what? I don't give a fuck what other people think. I am who I am. And if you don't like that, then that's your problem. But don't come and force your negativity on me for trying to change who I am. That is so, so important, because everyone follows the crowd because they're too scared to be judged, maybe. I don't know. I mean, each individual is different, but you know what? Like, fuck them. And like I said, it used to really affect me, but now, come and tell me that I look fat when I'm on stage. Do you know what I mean? Because I'll be the most shredded person you'll ever see. And it's just, yeah, I think you always will get things like that on social media because that's just the way it is. But you've just got to kind of, the quickest thing to do, delete the comment, just block them. And that's what I do, is just because my other half has control of my Instagram as well. So if she sees something before I see it, it's blocked and deleted. So I spend, I don't need that in my life. I don't need someone coming and telling me I'm fat or look like a man, because I don't care. So I think if you're someone that struggles with like comments like that on Instagram, delete it, block it. You don't need it. Don't need it in your life.
It's fucking wild what you see, and I always
It's
think as
mad.
well, yeah, like, or bashing women that use PDs or whatever, and like you said earlier, it's like, for fuck's sake, this is like 2024, and pretty much every
Yeah.
sport uses PDs. Like, have you lived under a rock? And it's like,
Mm,
these people sit behind their keyboards or whatever, and they're keyboard warriors, but those
mm.
things can stick. And I mean, for yourself, what happened with that first coach, and then if you get called that again X amount of years later, it's like, these people don't know what we've been through in our own personal lives to then have that keep coming back. It's fucking
Mm.
savage.
Yeah, yeah. I don't really know why people do it. And I think that's what upsets me the most, is because why would you actively go on someone's page and be like, you look like a man, and then leave? Like that, I don't understand what goes through people's heads to be, because not in a million, even if it was someone that I really did not like,
Yeah.
I would never in a million years go actively to their page and be a dick. Like, I can be like, don't really agree with that, but I'm not going to go actively and be like an asshole to them, because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to open your Instagram and see a comment that's just mean.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And I live in a world where I just want everyone to be nice. You know what I mean? Like, just be nice to each other.
I'm like, for fuck's sake. And of course, if you have clients come to you and say, oh, this has happened in life or on social media or whatever, I bet you're the same as me. Fuck, my ego kicks in. I'm like, just fucking chill out and be sensible here. Because it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
why are people so fucking horrible? Like, I
yeah,
just
yeah.
don't get it. And you can get on the bodybuilding scene and on Instagram and stuff like this, but for sure, staying authentic and leaning on your coach or your support network is super important. And with off season, have you found that you struggle with scale weight per se, like as in, obviously your scale weight goes up, but do you ever feel that holds you back, or you get any sort of kickback internally from that?
Not really, because like I said, I like to be bigger. So as long as the scale weight doesn't get to a point where I am literally just fat, then it doesn't really bother me too much. I can get quite obsessive about the scale in prep, which I think is quite common anyway. But during an off season, it's not something that really bothers me. I just like to be strong, like to be bigger, and if I'm going the right way about it, then yeah, I'm really not too bothered about it.
Do you have like I'm guessing like a steady rate of gain, and it just sort of ticks up over time, or do you have like set things?
Yeah. Yeah, so we used to, like, in my previous off seasons, we would have like a right, let's get to 84 kilos and kind of see where we're at. Whereas this off season, it's kind of just been like, oh, we'll just see where we end up, instead of being very number driven, because
Yeah.
it's coming back onto that, okay, I'm all in or not, and I will push myself till I get to that point. And so instead of having like a set weight that I need to be at, we just let my body do what it wants. So like some days it'll be a steady, or some weeks it'll be a steady rate of gain. And then like last week I lost weight, and then this week it's gone up again. And it just, naturally as a woman, it fluctuates a little bit more, but
Mm.
it's normally a pretty steady rate. And it's Tom's very good in the fact that it will be nice and consistent, and will only change things if they need to be changed. So like my food's just gone up again. So we simply just, because my rate of gain was like, I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it was like a steady, either like half a kilo towards a kilo. That's just naturally where it sort of falls. And then we'll kind of adapt things based on that. And then when I need to cut, we'll cut, but it's always quite steady. Like I said, I'll have a few drops, but I'm at that point now. If I miss a meal, then that's when my weight will just fly off. So it's kind of like keeping nice consistent weight gain through the months, through the weeks, or whatever, and just ensuring that composition is where it needs to be.
And then with where you said cut, would that be like if you needed to mini cut at some point, just as like a get in, get out type thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually prefer doing aggressive short mini cuts, especially when there's growth that needs to be done. So I would prefer to just cut everything down super low for 4 weeks, run
Yeah.
that through, and then get back into growing. We used to do like quite long cuts, like say like 6 to 8 weeks. But I found that if I'm spending more time cutting in my off season, then I'm wasting valuable time because I don't have time to be fucking around.
Yeah.
So if we could get in and get out and get back to growing, then I'd much prefer to do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. It's like that. I'm just fucking going all in. And then also, you know,
Yeah.
in an off season, again, person dependent, but it's that steady rate of gain. But then being able to know that, you know, you'll do whatever it takes, as it were. And I don't say that lightly, but, you know, from what you've described today, it's like, you know, when you're prepping, similar to me. And it's like, you've got to lose that weight, yes. But it's like, if you want those maximal gains in the off season, it's like, you know, in both phases, it's full commitment. Now, obviously, some off-plan meals and whatever, which we've spoken about, but it's still nailing the fundamentals at all times, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Nail those fundamentals, keep nice and consistent with those. And obviously, like you said, have some food here and there. But yeah, just really, really nail those fundamentals because I cannot say that enough. Is to just nail food, sleep. And obviously, as I've gone through my career, my emphasis on recovery has gotten greater and greater and greater because the recovery side of things will keep me moving along. And I say that to everyone who doesn't pay attention to, I'm very lucky to be supported by a masseuse in Cheltenham who's called Ash. He's obviously part of COA Performance and he's brilliant. And he's looked after me for the past couple of years. And I started with him doing like maybe once a month, sorry. And now I see him every week. My training is very much based around not necessarily safety, but longevity again. So, I'm just about to release a YouTube channel about a YouTube episode about my leg training and how it's changed and where there's a lot more emphasis on longevity and stuff like that. And there's so much more emphasis on recovery. So, and I think that's something that a lot of people forget is, yeah, you know your sleep, you know your food, you know you need to do your diet training and stuff, but where the growing happens is outside of the gym. So
Yeah.
you should be placing a lot of emphasis on your sleep, your recovery, what you're doing outside of the gym. And once you've nailed all of those, then you kind of think about what else you need to apply later down the line.
Yeah, and it's like the nitty-gritty things, isn't it? But again, it's
Absolutely.
like, you know, you've almost got to get excited about your sleep routine, and if you wear your gut blockers, all these things that we do,
Yeah.
it's such a, when you actually describe bodybuilding to someone outside of it, people are like,
Yeah. What?
you lot are weirdos. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
I like being the weirdo though, and I'm sure you do.
Absolutely. The weirder the better,
Yeah, for sure. Now, before we wrap up, I want to ask you a question. What is your favorite meal on plan?
On plan.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for a jacket potato,
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. My missus makes a mean jacket potato. So I like chicken, vegetables, and a bit of and jack potato or potato actually in general. I'm a potato whore.
I love it. Now, if people have listened and of course they want to follow you, I'm going to put your Instagram in the description. But with coaching, do people go onto your profile and have you got like a link that they would go through? How does that work?
Yeah, so there is a link in my bio.
Okay.
But it's better to just send me a DM and be like, hey, Sara, like just interested in your coaching, just so we can get a consult. So I do have a type form, but sometimes it's a little bit touch and go. So you're just better to just DM me.
Yeah, type form.
Yeah.
Yeah. The nemesis for online
It's
coaching.
great until it's not great. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for today. It's been super, super
Thank you
cool.
for having me on.
Just to get to know you as a person as well, because let's remember, like you've said throughout this episode, we are humans as well, guys. And remember, if you're listening and you want to reach out to either me or Sara or share it on your story, hit us up. And of course, thank you for listening. And Sara, I will speak to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on, Bab. Take care.
Bye.
Hey!